Come on, running. Okay, says it's starting. I'm going to trust it. So good afternoon. Since we've just tripped past the 12 o'clock mark, we are off on a journey because we are in Parashat Vayeitztei. This is the journey of Jacob, and by journey I mean both travel journey, but I also mean the grand parasha that deals with his journey as a man, his journey as a human being that is developing from the young person that went through the deception around the birthright and the deception around the birth blessing, and also did the deal for the birthright, and will eventually be meeting his brother again. This is the 20-some years in between. It's rather major, and it starts off with a rather major scene, one of the most famous scenes in the entire lives of all the patriarchs, the scene of the ladder to heaven. You've heard the song Stairway to Heaven? Here we go. So we're going to have to find out what this ladder is, what this dream means, because it is extremely cryptic. And that means there's ripe for discussion. So we're going to be on page 166. This is chapter 28, and it begins with verse 10. For Vayeitztei. All right, everyone found it? Harriet, can I impose upon you?
Okay, now, Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. He came upon a certain place and stopped there for the night, for the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of that place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place. He had a dream. A stairway was set on the ground, and its top reached to the sky, and angels of God were going up and down on it. And the Lord was standing beside him.
All right, we're going to pause there because that's our first little page. And also because the translation has taken all the fun out of this passage. And we need to rough it up a little bit, to get back into the Hebrew nitty-gritty just a little bit, to try and recognize some of the things that our commentators are going to be pointing to as, well, clues of what this actually means. So first of all, come back to verse 11. A certain place, right? Vayivga bamakom. Now, when you have a ba for the beginning of a Hebrew word, what does that literally mean? Right, to the place, right? In the place. The ah is the holdover from the ha, the definite article, the. So he's in the certain place. Would have been better than a certain place. Definite article, but this word in the Hebrew has the definite article, the, built into it. He came to the place, literally just bamakom, the place. Okay, that's an important word in Judaism. We're going to come back to what that's important, but you can see that makes a difference in the feeling. Like, okay, automatically now I'm reading going, which place are you talking about? Right? What's the place? This is the place Beersheba? Is the place Haran? I mean, he couldn't have gotten there in one night, although there was a midrash that says he did, but we'll talk maybe sometime about that. So then we move on. Later on in that same verse, but the next sentence by the translation, taking one of the stones. In the Hebrew, Vayivkach me'avnei hamakom. He took from the stones of the place. Right? Is it one or isn't it one? Right? Because he puts it under his head. So the translator is perfectly within his rights, or her, to make that from the stones mean one stone. But on the other hand, taking from the stones could mean he took more than one stone. And the ambiguity is there in the Hebrew. It is completely removed in the English. And we need to have that ambiguity, or else we don't know what questions to ask. Make sense? One more little thing to point out, and then we're going to move on for the story, which is in verse 13, where it says that God is standing, right? Nitzav alav, right? So what is nitzav alav? How would you translate that into English? Or how could you translate that into English?
Standing above him.
Standing above him. Or what if you have this question of what's the of? What is the him? Because that is not the only translation for that. It could be it. Right? Remember, in Hebrew, there's no inanimate pronoun. There's no it. Everything is he or she, whether it's a table or a person. And the it that is here could equally be the ladder.
Yeah.
So is God standing over him, or is God standing upon it, the ladder? That is the ambiguity of the pronoun that is totally lost once the translator has made his choice and forced it into an English word of him, because now it has to be Jacob. Okay, so now that you're more confused than you were, we're ready to keep going. All right, so we've got, what is this place? Was it many stones? Was it one stone? And where exactly is God standing? These are questions that should be percolating, but for any reader of the Hebrew that you might have missed if we were just reading in the English. Okay, keep going.
And God said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. The ground on which you are lying, I will assign to you and to your offspring. Your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you and your descendants. Remember, I am with you. I will protect you wherever you go and will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you.
Okay, that's pretty clear. What's God promising? What's the speech that God's giving him here?
Make him not holy, but chosen.
Chosen, right. This is, I'm still with you, says God. Right? I am with you as I was with Abraham and as I was with Isaac, or am with Isaac. Isaac is not necessarily dead yet. That this is my blessing to them is going to be my blessing to you, that you will be numerous, you will be prosperous, you will be under my care, and you will spread out. Kind of important, because Jacob needs to hear that right now. Right? Remember where Jacob is and where he's coming from and what he's got and what he's not got. Right? He has nothing. He's left home with almost nothing, just the clothes on his back. And he is leaving because he has just deceived his dying father. That's the kind of thing that you might think would mess up your relationship with God. So hearing this right here and now was very important for Jacob, and knowing that God would be with him, even as he left the land of Israel, even as he left the land that was the promised land to Isaac. To hear that promised land, which he kind of thought he was getting when he was doing the whole dealing stuff, to know that that is still indeed going to be his heritage, this is a very important reassurance to him. Okay.
Besides that, it's a very long journey, dangerous to go from Beersheba to
Uh,
Haran.
it's almost as dangerous then as it would be now, because Haran is up in Syria right now. So yeah, you wouldn't want to walk from Beersheba to Haran today. And you probably didn't want to walk back then either. So knowing that God was going to protect him on the journey is very important.
May I ask,
yeah.
How does the Hebrew, how does the original Hebrew translate dust of the earth?
How does it translate the dust of the earth? Afar haaretz, like the dust of the earth.
So
it is. That is very.
That means the grains of sand on the beach, that kind of thing. That it means a great nation.
So
would it mean a humble nation?
What does it mean to be like the dust?
Other passages, you return to dust, dust you came from, dust you go back.
Right. Is this a positive or is this a negative? Am I being blessed by being dust, or is this a negative for being dust? We're going to come back to this a little bit later on, because that is indeed one of the key words in this blessing that seems to fit just the normal pattern. We were told with Abraham that you would be blessed like the dust and you would be like the stars, right? That was a symbol, and the rest of the passage seems to imply that it was a symbol for being a multitude, for being, like you said, as numerous as the dust. But in context, it may have some other implications. So we're going to have to come back to that. So thank you for pointing it out early. Any other questions on this so far? All right.
The families of the earth shall bless themselves by you.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, if the goodwill be blessed if they're good to you?
Well, it's not saying it quite as clearly. I mean, that was the phrase that was used specifically for the blessing to Abraham. You will be blessed, and those who curse you would be cursed. But this is saying that the families of the earth will be blessed through you is a little bit more ambiguous. And also in the Hebrew, we get this, I'm trying to figure out how much we want to go down the rabbit hole of Hebrew, but there's no, because it's really kind of important for where we're going to end up. But if you look in verse 14, when you see the initial phrase, right, Ka'afar ha'aretz, you will be like the dust of the eretz, the land, or the country, because that word is a little ambiguous in Hebrew. It can mean both land as well as land, meaning like a nation. But in the next line, we're talking about the blessing. It says, Kol mishpachot ha'adama, right? All the families of the Adama. Now, in the English, that also gets translated as earth, right? I'm just making sure that all the families of the earth, and you'll be like the dust of the earth. In Hebrew, the two words, dust of the earth, families of the earth there, those are not the same word in the passage, right? It is eretz and adama. And adama is usually not a word meaning like world.
Physical earth. Right,
it's like dirt. It's the soil. It's the land that you till. Now, that's why Adam was called Adam, because he was taken from Adama, because he was taken from the dirt type of earth, not because he was taken from the globe. So there is this unusual wordplay that's being used here for land, for dust, for soil, and well, now since you've had me point it out, well, I wasn't going to go that deep in it, but because you pointed it out, it'll be part of what our discussion will be when we get back to this question later on. You're not derailing. You're just you're a little bit ahead, but you're stretching the discussion, which is good, because I wish we could have more about some of the Hebrew incongruities. It's just this particular passage cries out for it.
You're the dust of the land, but you're
the families of the dirt
and the salt of the earth.
Right. It's an unusual pairing, and it really seems to be driving home this whole metaphor of dirt, which is unusual, especially given the fact that the first blessing that he mentions at the very beginning of this speech to Jacob is the ground on which you are lying I will assign to you, right? There isn't ground in the sense of Adama. There it's ground as in haaretz, right? So you are going to be blessed with haaretz that you are lying on, but you will be ka'afar haaretz, like the dust of haaretz, and the families of the Adama will bless you, or will be blessed through you. So that's 4 different ways of talking about dirt in a very tight passage, and a lot of that gets sort of blurred in the English translation, because, like I said, if you're going to translate Adama and Eretz as earth in 2 places and keep those as synonyms, then why wouldn't you also translate the ground upon which you lie as being the earth upon which you lie? And we'll come back to maybe why the translator didn't do that, and why he probably should have why he should have translated that as being earth or land. It would have been a better translation in keeping with what our rabbis teach. Okay, we are onward from verse 16. Jacob's reaction.
His sleep and said, "Surely the Lord is present in this place, and I did not know it." Shaken, he said, "How awesome is this place! This is none other than the abode of God, and that is the gateway to heaven." Early in the morning, Jacob took the stone that he had put under his head and set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. He named that site Bethel, but previously the name of the city had been Luz.
All right. So he wakes up from this experience of the ladder with the angels going up and coming down, and he is clearly shaken because he has an understanding of God that he doesn't seem to have expected. Right? The God was here in this place and I didn't know. Now, wait a minute. God was in this place and I didn't know. He didn't learn from his grandfather and father that God is everywhere? Right? I mean, if I were to say God is here in this room, you would say, well, duh. And he's also in the parking lot, and he's also out the door. I mean, as far as God is in a place, he is in every place. So what do you mean that God was in this place and I didn't know it? We will come back to that. Okay, so let's talk about this place, though, because that is a very, as I mentioned at the very beginning, calling this place hamakom, the place, seems to set up an expectation for the reader that you're supposed to know where he is, that you're supposed to have some familiarity with the place. That's how the definite article works in every language. Let's see what our commentators have tried to help us with. We're going to start off with Rashi, because Rashi's always a good place to start. Oh, did we get some blank pages?
No, it just reveals. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, as long as everyone should have a front and a back, one side that says Parashat Vayeitztei and the other side begins mid-paragraph, high heavens. Okay. You still on?
Sure. Does not mention which place, but by writing Bamakom, the place it refers to is the place mentioned already in another passage, that is, Mount Moriah, of which it is stated in Genesis, and he saw the place,
Hamakom,
afar off.
All right, so Mount Moriah is also known better as? The Temple Mount, right? So Mount Moriah is the Temple Mount, Jerusalem, exactly. And Abraham doing when he saw Hamakom from a distance?
He's going to sacrifice Isaac.
This is the prelude to the Akedah, to the sacrifice of Isaac. By finding the other Makom that was already an antecedent, that was already there in the text earlier, and that was significant, and now finding this one now, Rashi, based off the Midrash, is saying, okay, so that was the Makom, and this is the Makom, Isaac's near sacrifice, and that is Har Habayit, the Temple Mount. Guess where Jacob is having his night? He is sleeping on the Temple Mount. No temple, obviously, there yet, but he is sleeping in the same spot that his father was almost sacrificed. That's where he is. By the way, the term makom in general is a phrase that is used as a name for God. Most famously, or at least most familiarly, I think, to people, is the phrase of consolation that we say to somebody who is a mourner. Right? Hamakom yinachem etchem. May the makom, the place, grant you comfort. It's an odd title, but hearkening back to this as well as to other usages as being that centerpiece of Jerusalem, it maybe makes a little more sense. Okay, place identified, maybe. But now if we think about this as being the Temple Mount, the idea of there being the ladder going up to heaven, rather than just some, maybe that makes a little more sense? Maybe? Maybe. Let's talk about those rocks.
He arranged the stones in the form of a drain pipe around his head, for he was afraid of wild beasts.
Right, so what Rashi is saying is that he did what any sensible person does, which is you're going to lay down on the ground, you're going to put rocks around your head. That's the best you can do. He doesn't have a tent. All right, he's got his cloak to keep himself warm, and that's it. So he gathers some rocks, and he puts a little circle, a little wall around his head to try and make sure that he's not going to get scorpions in the ear and stuff like that. Sensible camping technique. So, but
lying your head on a rock would not be very comfortable.
Putting your head on a rock as a pillow? Well, it depends on what you're used to, I suppose.
That's true.
Yeah, but sleeping with your head just straight on the ground, our necks don't usually like that quite so much. Having some sort of support, even if it's just a shelf, for those of us who have ever had to sleep on airplanes, it doesn't have to be soft as long as it keeps our neck in a better position. But notice that Rashi is taking the opinion that it was the avnei hamakom, that these are the rocks of the place, that it's plural. So he's handling the first half of that question of, was it rocks or rock, by saying it were rocks. That he creates his own little wall for camping.
The rocks began quarreling with one another.
The rocks are arguing.
One said, "Upon me let this righteous man rest his head." And another said, "Upon me let him rest it." The Holy One, blessed be he, straightway made them all into one stone. This explains what is written, "And he took the stone that he had put under his head."
So notice the very neat reconciliation. We have multiple stones at the beginning in the grammar, and we have a single stone being put up as a marker at the end. Something must have brought them together. God. Okay, now, lovely image and a wonderful little children's animation in the making right here of all the rocks coming together. What's it trying to say? I mean, what's the meaning of the midrash? Remember, the rabbis didn't write midrashim because they wanted to tell stories that they thought were cute. They wrote midrashim because they saw in the incongruities of the text that, or the unexpectedness of the text, that there was something we were supposed to learn, more than just, oh, that's cute. So, new opinions, feelings, reactions?
My thought, as we're reading that, is the motto of the United States: out of many, one. So you're uniting.
Exactly. Out of many comes one. And the idea that Jacob, who is going to be blessed with how many sons? 12, which will become how many nations?
13 tribes. Well, one nation.
Exactly. One people.
That's right. One people.
Right. How many of them were quarreling about which should be which? And one, what's that? All of them. And what was one of the biggest, when it came time to actually settle the land of Israel, was where will the righteous one rest? Where will the Mishkan be erected? Where will the temple be built? And where did the temple end up getting built? Bamakom, in this place. Right? This became the spot of one, and it was the one because it didn't belong to anyone else. Right? Jerusalem was kind of like Washington, D.C. It didn't belong to any of the tribes. It was David's private city by right of conquest. Up here, it settled the arguments among the stones, and it brought the nation together to be one under Davidic and Solomonic rule. So the quarreling rocks here seem to be a presaging of the quarreling of the brothers, the quarreling of the tribes, and the final unification of our people into one nation rather than quarreling rocks. Yeah, it's not just a cute animation. Okay. And now, his reaction.
"For had I known it, I would not have slept in such a holy place as this."
All right, so Rashi takes the very straightforward answer to, and I didn't know it, that it isn't that God was in this place, because of course God is everywhere, but God is especially in this place. This place is holy. This place is Hamakom. There's a ladder to heaven here, right? In future, this will be where the temple stands. And clearly, we wouldn't go to sleep in the spot that was befitting the temple of Jerusalem. Right? Even if it wasn't built there yet, the fact that this spot could be and would be eventually that spot means there's an innate holiness there. That's not the place for napping. So Rashi takes a fairly straightforward interpretation of Jacob's startling realization when he wakes up. Sforno has a different take.
"There can be no question that this is a location from where the gift of prophetic insights is dispensed, seeing that I have been granted such an insight without even having expected it or prepared myself for it spiritually. It is a fact that the characteristics of a person undergo changes in the land of Israel, just as the climate and very air in this country are different. One's mental and spiritual progress. Our sages have phrased this as, the very air of the land of Israel makes one wiser. If I had realized the special distinction of this site, I would have prepared myself mentally for receiving these divine insights."
All right, so according to Sforno, what does it mean that God was in this place, but I didn't know? It's not God's just literal existence, but something special. Work with me, people.
Prophetic insight.
Prophetic insight, right?
There
This,
you go.
right. This is a, if you will, a portal, right? This is a spot where the inspiration, the outpouring of God's presence into the world is first splashing down And therefore, even those who are unprepared be more susceptible to prophetic inspiration. And if he'd known that, I would have prepared. Right? If he knew that he was walking under this outpouring of God's Spirit, he would have prepared more than just making a little campsite. He would have mentally and spiritually prepared himself. So God in this place, again, doesn't mean God is here and only here. It means that God's prophetic gift hits here on earth first before spreading out to the rest of the world and to infuse others with inspiration as well. Therefore, I would have really prepared a little more. And then I love just this little phrase that he brings back about the idea that, yeah, all of Israel is kind of like that. Being in Israel in general changes you. There is something special just about being in the land of Israel, being at the epicenter of Israel in Jerusalem. And
I just got something in my head. Jacob built this little wall around his head. I think this is a clue, because the temple will be built there. And that's like a clue for the future. The
marker.
Yeah, the marker for the temple is there.
Exactly. And remember, it's not just a little wall, but in the morning he puts up a rock as a marker, a real marker. So yes. Yeah, it's not just in your head. It's, I think, a very good idea.
But he calls it Bethel.
But he does call it Bethel, and so there are disagreements about the attribution of this as being Har Moriah, as being the site of the Temple Mount. There are some traditions that say no, this is a separate place. But for the purposes of our discussion, we're going to continue within the majority midrashic tradition, which is to say that this was in Jerusalem. So, but you're right. There are other commentators that say, no, we don't have to shoehorn this into Jerusalem. This may indeed have been another spot. But that geography may or may not be as important when we reach further into the discussion. Okay. But the dream itself, we haven't really talked about. Right? In the dream, we have the, let's see. We have the angels, that's an angel, going up, and we have the angels coming down. That's a better angel. There. Now they're angels. And we need to figure out what's going on here. Because one of the first things that is a little surprising is the order, right? Because why is that?
They're going up first? I thought angels lived in heaven. Wouldn't they be coming down first?
Exactly, right? From earth, what goes up comes down. But from heaven, you got to come down before you go back up. So, how is this happening? What does that signify? And when you read that, again, little bells should be going off in your head of, I got to dig deeper to figure out why this is different than I expected. Our first Bereshit Rabbah, explaining why it is different.
It states first ascending and afterwards descending. Those angels who accompanied him in the land of Israel were not permitted to leave the land. They ascended to heaven, and angels which were to minister outside the land descended to accompany him.
All right, so this is the answer from Bereshit Rabbah, the Midrash, and one of the answers that Rashi favors. And the idea here is based off the speech that God gives him, and sort of sees them as being the same. Right? The vision and the speech are the speech is an explanation of the vision. When God says, I will be with you where you go, what God is saying is that even though you're leaving the specialness of the land of Israel, I am still going to protect you no matter where you are. And that is sort of the root for this explanation. Right? He's in the midst of a journey. He's worried about God's protection. He's worried about God's presence and the covenant. And God is saying, no, you may be losing your Israel angel buddies, but you're picking up other angel buddies that are still going to be with you. Ish?
Changing of the guard.
Changing of the guard, exactly. You know, they finished one leg, and the new guards take over for the rest of the trip. Maybe. But if you're a little dubious, it's okay. We've got explanation number 2. Okay. And this explanation comes from Targum Yonatan, which is the Aramaic translation, the most Aramaic translation of the Bible. And he adds in some explanations rather than just translating literally the words like onkelos, the other Aramaic translation.
And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder was fixed in the ground, and the top of it reached to the height of heaven. And behold, the two angels who went to Sodom fell from the midst of them, because they had revealed the secrets of the Lord of the world. And being cast forth, they had walked till the time that Jacob went out from the house of his father, and had accompanied him with kindliness unto Bethel. In that day had ascended to the high heavens, and said, Come, see Jacob the pious, whose likeness is inlaid in the throne of glory, and whom you have so greatly desired to behold. Then the rest of the angels of the Holy Lord descended to look upon him, Jacob.
Okay, another great animated sequence. Let's make sure we understand. I can see some like, where are they pulling this out of?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's make sure we understand first of all what Targum is saying, the Targum Yonatan is saying, and then why it's saying. All right. So it's saying no. These are actually two angels that are going up, and these are the angels that went to Sodom. Now, first of all, how do we get to two?
Well, there were three.
No, how do we get to two from this text? Why would we need two angels to be going up the ladder?
Well, the text just has it as plural.
Exactly
Angels
right.
were going.
Thank you.
Angels were
Right?
coming.
The text is plural, so therefore it couldn't have been one. It had to be at least be two. Two angels. Wait, I know two angels, and I know two angels that I never remember hearing. They left Earth. They went to Sodom. They went to Sodom, and they gave their message to Lot, and then they were trying to hurry them out of the town. Lot and his daughters go off, but we never hear what happened to them. Where are they? They've been hanging out, right? They were, according to mystical tradition, they were a little blabby with mortals, and therefore they were not allowed back up. But at this point, as they've accompanied Jacob to this spot, they can now finally return. And when they get up there, they say, hey guys, guess who's at the bottom of the ladder tonight? It's Jacob. And why is Jacob special? First line, why is Jacob special? Whose likeness is inlaid in the throne of glory. What an odd phrase.
Yeah. What is that?
All right, so first of all, we have to back up. Jacob. Jacob, also known as?
Israel.
Thank you. Which is also the nation. Anytime you see the name Jacob in the text, especially in Midrash, you have to be wondering, are we talking about the guy or are we talking about the people? And oftentimes they'll use the guy to talk about the people. So when it's said that Jacob is inlaid, his visage, his likeness is inlaid in the throne of glory, it is most likely talking about the nation of Israel that is in the throne of glory, because it is the nation of Israel that will carry the Torah. It is the nation of Israel that will carry the gift of the Torah, that upon which God's throne of glory is founded. Right? Though it's like the foundation dais is Torah, and then God is upon that. So when we say that Jacob is in the throne of glory, it is to say Jacob, the nation of Israel, when following Torah, we are that equal to the foundation stone of God's throne. Makes more sense now? A little bit? And for the angels to then want to see a human being that truly will reflect God's throne, they come back down to see. Right? It's like, really, is it possible that here on earth something could give the likeness of God's glory? And the answer is, yeah, well, with Torah and with people doing what they're supposed to, yeah, that can happen. It's a beauty show. It's not just because Jacob is so handsome. It is coming to see that it is possible within the physical realm for there to be a reflection of God's throne. And it's going to happen through Jacob, that is to say Israel, that is to say the nation.
But since angels are created to have one task each.
According to one midrash.
Oh, okay. So there are other
Well,
explanations.
the angel Michael,
Yeah,
does he only hang around once?
No, he had a lot to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that and Gabrielle
What I was
and
gonna go with
Mhm.
is that he must have had something to do in addition to just vocaling Jacob.
I mean, for the other angels.
Yeah, the one's coming down.
Right. So this midrash that Targum Yonatan is drawing on to write his translation doesn't really care about the one task, one angel rule.
Okay.
And that's one of the things when we're looking at midrashim to always remember is that you cannot harmonize every midrash. They don't all fit together neatly. Some of them do.
I just thought there was a dominant theme with angels, that they were automata that had one task to do and then they would go back
So
to God.
philosophically, automaton, absolutely. Midrashically, based on the Rashi that is used in the story of the angels that come for Sodom and Gomorrah, that is the one that is most famous. Either of those are the dominant themes throughout the whole body of Jewish angel thinking or angelic thinking. Okay. But just in case you're still not convinced, that's okay. Radak is going to come and try and help us.
There are many different opinions among our sages as to how best to explain this dream,
What a surprise.
as well as among other readers of the Bible. Some say this was a preview of the revelation at Mount Sinai, and that the numerical value of the letters in the word shalom,
Sulam, which means ladder.
equals that of the word Sinai, which is 130.
Right, Sinai.
Oh, Sinai.
The mountain of, right, Sinai,
and
right?
Sulam,
So
the ladder and
the
Sinai.
ladder and the mountain name both have the same gematria. They have the same numerical value. So Radak is saying there's lots of different explanations, but one you might want to consider is that this is a preview of the revelation at Sinai. And if you'd like to know that better, then we're going to look at the next midrash.
Bar Kapara taught there is no dream that has no explanation.
Which in less negative language would be every dream has an explanation. Every dream means something. It may be tricky to figure out what it means, and you may not always be right with what you think, and there may be multiple explanations, but no dream is just empty. There's always something there.
So when it says, and behold, there was a ladder, what it means is this is the ramp of the altar.
Clearly. Right? Dreams are symbolic, people. Work with the symbolism.
And when it says he set it on the ground, this is the altar.
Right? So you have the ramp, and now you have the ground, the altar.
And as it says, and then it says, an altar of the ground you should make for me.
Right? Remember in Exodus, just after the Ten Commandments, we get that whole description of the altar being made out of the unhewn stones, etc. So it's an altar from the ground, the ladder on the ground. Words to me. So that is the interpretation that he's running with.
And where it says, and its top reached to the sky, this means the sacrifices whose scent reaches to the sky.
Right? Because the aroma of the sacrifice just goes up. Right? That's a ladder to heaven.
Where it says, and behold, the angels of the Lord, what it means is these are the high priests.
Right? Gotta have your Kohanim.
And it says going up and down. This refers to the high priests going up and down the ramp of the altar. And it says, behold, the Lord was standing above it. It also says in another place,
In Amos.
Yeah. And it says, and I saw the Lord standing above the altar. Oh, good.
I'm just going to write the word Lord. Right? So what Bar Kapara has done for our first taste of this reading of each phrase interpretively, like a dream should be interpreted, is to say all of these pieces fit very nicely with an image, both thematically as well as linguistically, of the altar and of what was going on, which would make perfect sense if Hamakom is the Temple Mount. Right? If this is really he's sleeping on the Temple Mount, then for him to have a preview vision in dream form, which of course is not going to be literal for his mind because he's never seen what will eventually happen 1,000 years later, it would make a lot of sense for him to have that preview in some form that he could imagine. And this is what he's seeing. Make sense? Makes sense. All right, well, let's get back to that Sinai one. That's kind of intriguing because that's a whole nother mountain image.
The rabbis interpreted it as referring to Sinai.
Right, so Bar Kapara was in the minority with his priest interpretation. They're interpreting this as being the drama of Sinai.
And so when it says, and he dreamed and there was a ladder, what it means is this is Mount Sinai.
Right, so we got a mountain. That's a ladder. It goes up like mountains.
And where it says standing on the ground, later it says, and they stood at the foot of the mountain.
Right? Who's standing at the mountain?
The Israelites, the ones who had just gotten out of Egypt.
And what does Israelites equal?
Jacob.
Right? Israelites, Jacob, right? J-I. We're the same. So the Israelites standing at the bottom, Jacob sleeping at the bottom of the ladder, it's the same thing.
Where it says, and its top reached the sky, in Deuteronomy it says, and behold, a fire burned until the heart of heaven.
Right? That's my fire. At Mount Sinai, it was a rather impressive display, if you remember the descriptions in the Torah, which Deuteronomy is part of.
Where it says, and behold, the angels of the Lord, what this refers to is Moses and Aaron.
All right, we'll just put a little Moses there on the mountain.
Where it says, and behold, the Lord stood above it. It says in Breshit also, and the Lord descended upon Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain.
Right, with a whole cloud of God's glory on the top of the mountain. That's God being on it. Now again, see how defining upon it, changing the way we interpret the dream, than rather that God was standing above him. Remember, we had that question about alav in that earlier verse of what the pronoun meant. Was it upon him, meaning God was standing over Jacob, or was it upon it, meaning God was standing at the top of the ladder? Both these interpretations, you'll notice, are going with the alav, meaning that it was upon it, that God was on it at the top of the ladder, than our English translation.
Did Aaron go up the mountain?
Not all the way up. There was a time when Moses, Aaron, and the elders did go partly on the mountain. But Aaron was definitely part of the drama of Mount Sinai, but with the whole golden calf thing.
Yes.
But it says the angels went up.
Yes. Well, because we got plural, so they got to put another guy in there. But it's a dream, so anything can happen in a dream. Trust me, that it's a dream is a very important interpretive device. And then we have the final bit.
Phrase, the land upon which you are lying, to you I will give it, and to your seed.
All right, so pause that. This phrase we saw back before, and it's the word Adamah was the word. Let's make sure, because we go back and forth so much. No, it wasn't. It was Haaretz, right? Right. I will give you this Haaretz, right? This land that you will be that you are lying upon. And there's a question that goes with this, right? Read the first little explanation, the first exclamation.
What is the greatness of this?
All right, so you got to be literal minded here. Here you have Jacob. He is laid out on the ground, sleeping, and God says, I'll give you the land you're lying on. Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
All of this? the amount of land that I am lying on,
Right.
This is my inheritance. Right? This is a burial plot. I mean,
Yes.
this is not what you would call a great inheritance.
That's true.
It's true, right? So again, anytime anyone tells you that they always read the Bible literally, then God was literally promising Jacob a 6 by 3 foot spot of dirt that I'm going to give you the land that you're lying on? No, but the Midrash has to go a little bit further than that, because it wants to make a point beyond just, of course, God meant the whole country like he meant with the covenant with Abraham and Isaac. They want to make a point by using the literalness, the unexpected literalness, to then be able to put in a very important teaching.
Rabbi Yitzchak says this teaches that the Holy One folded up the whole land of Israel and put it under our father Yaakov, in order that it be easily conquered by his descendants.
All right, so again, wonderful animated scene. He lies down for bed, and God does Star Trek or Doctor Who space-time continuum folding, and all of the world folds up until it fits underneath Jacob. Pretty nifty, right?
Yeah.
Great animation sequence, lovely in the children's book. What does it mean?
You're sitting on top of it.
You're sitting on top of the world. Absolutely. That is a huge part of it, right? That no matter where you're standing now, you have it all. But think about where Jacob is standing or laying down right now in his life. What's he got?
Oh,
Nothing.
Nothing. Right now, literally, all he has is the dirt he's laying down on. That is literally all he's got. But for God to be helping him understand by saying, no, I know you only have this right now, but you will have all of it. It is all with you now, even if you don't feel like you've got it. Right? Everything you own, everything you will inherit, it's there. It's already wrapped up and laid out beneath you, even if you don't see it. And a vision helps, but you got to get the message. And the idea then that it will be easily conquered by his descendants, does that mean when we were traveling around the land of Israel and fighting the Canaanites that we were going through wormholes and it was easy to walk back? No, it wasn't easy at all. But the understanding that this was ours, that we already had possession of it, that it was already folded into who we are. We are Jacob. It's already folded into who we are. That is what you need to do the hard work of conquering a land and taking it back from the people who had taken it from us. Right? You need that inspiration. You need that belief. You need that faith in God's promise to be willing to do all that is necessary to take hold and keep hold of the land of. But there's a little more than that I want to push. This is an additional interpretation. So we're going to do bonus. But first I want to make sure we got all this so far. So we got one more little taste that's going to seem off track. But you have to understand one little bit of rabbinic analysis. If you look at a person laying down, they are considered to have 4 cubits of space. That's considered to be the halachic measure of the space that a human being takes up.
Is a cubit length or is it area?
A cubit in this case is square, 4 cubits square.
When they built the ark, it was cubits were.
Well, because the ark you get double dimensions. It's this many cubits this way, this many cubits that way.
But cubit is a direction.
Well, yes, but I mean it's like a cubit is roughly 18 inches. Right, so if you were to say it's 4 cubits, it doesn't just mean a 4 cubit bar, because then you have to balance on it.
Okay.
But when it'd be 4 cubits this way, 4 cubits that way. That is 16 square cubits.
Okay.
Thank you, or 4 cubits squared.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, 16 square cubit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, good thing I got that out of the way.
Yes.
I'm glad I cleared that up. So the idea that each person has their own 4 cubits becomes important in certain circumstances. The most famous is if you are caught because the time has changed unexpectedly, or your travel took longer than expected outside of a city limits before Shabbat begins. You are trapped for Shabbat. Right? That's because you can't travel on Shabbat. But the rabbis also knew you can't stand like this for 25 hours. So they said, well, how much space is your space for that Shabbat while you sit and wait for Havdalah the next night? They said 4 cubits, right? So you got 6 foot, about 3 foot that way, 3 foot that way, 3 foot that way, 3 foot that way. That's how much space you have to be in. By the way, for the bathroom breaks, just in case you're wondering. But that gives you space to stand. It also gives you space to lay down. Nowadays, you probably have to increase it because people, on average, have gotten a little taller. But that measure of the man as being 4 cubits, that measure of a human's space being 4 cubits, going to be important as I push this interpretation one more level.
From the day on which the house of the sanctuary was destroyed, the Holy One, blessed be he, has had in his world only the 4 cubits of the law alone.
All right, so it's a very famous passage from Brachot and a very cryptic passage from Brachot, from the Talmud. So, all right, we've drawn Jacob asleep how many times now? According to the rabbis, a person asleep has 4 cubits. So Jacob sleeping is the archetypical man, is the archetypical human being having that space. Jacob sleeping, according to most of the midrashim we've been following,
Temple Mount.
on the Temple Mount, right, where the altar would eventually stand. And the teaching in Brachot is that since the altar was destroyed, the only thing that God has left is 4 cubits. The law. Which means that since the temple was destroyed, if you want to feel God's presence, if you want to ride the ladder, if you want to feel the angels going up, the angels coming down, you're not doing it at the altar through the law, which is centered around us and our behavior and our actions, and centered around the great gift of Torah. Right? So whether you view this as Mount Sinai or the altar, the message is the same. That the part that we have left, if you want to feel God on that ladder, if you want to see the angels, then it's the Arba Amot, it's the 4 cubits of halakha, of how we live our life according to Torah. And that access in every place. So although the idea of God being driven out of the temple, which is obviously not literally true because God is everywhere, but the idea that God's presence is now felt through the 4 cubits of the law is in many ways liberating. You don't have to go to Sinai, you don't have to go to the altar, all you have to do is go to the Torah. And the ladder is still there. That links heaven and earth. Right? Remember I said we started with dust? We're going to finish with dust. The whole idea of, is dust a good thing or a bad thing? Well, dust spreads. As I know too well in my house, dust travels. We have been like the dust of the earth in the sense that we have been scattered around the earth. But wherever we go, each one of us has 4 cubits. And every spot that we stand, we are a portal of bringing God into that spot if we are making that spot a Torah spot. And we didn't know it. Right? God was in this place and I didn't know it. Constantly creating spaces for God in our life. And as the dust of the earth, we create a spot on the earth where heaven and earth meet. If we live a life according to Torah, according to Judaism. Good?
Wow.
Good. Okay.